hurt. Here's why church hurt is different.
Talk
the
about
expectation in church
Yes.
is different. I don't have a high expectation of my boss. I don't necessarily have a high expectation of my church because they're not built on my coach, because they're not built on a foundation of like morality and love. When I come to church, I expect this to be the place I can trust to at least be safe. You know what I'm saying? And so the hurt is deeper because the expectation is greater.
It's greater.
So for me, what I feel the burden for is, again, not better or worse, it's like credibility.
We were having a conversation, well, we're always having a conversation, especially Sarah and I, about the church and the current state of the church. And I think that there are, and I'm sure you get asked this all the time because you're a pastor and people can't wait to talk to a pastor about church. So I'm sure you're so used to this conversation. But, you know, historically, there's so many people who suffer from church hurt, or people who don't believe in the sanctity of church anymore, or the business behind church. And I love how when I came to your church, I felt like something anew. I felt a new energy. I felt like, oh, this isn't what I'm used to. I didn't feel tradition. Like people were there kind of relaxed. It's hoodies, it's jeans. It's like, even the praise and worship is different. Like the worship is kind of more like kind of, not rock band, but like it's just more bandy. It's not like it ain't a Baptist choir. You know what I mean? They sing it, but they ain't singing like that. They ain't singing. But they singing. Don't get me wrong, they singing. What is your perspective of that?
Yeah, I think man, this is challenging. And here's the reason that it's challenging. It's because like, I think sometimes to improve a thing, you got to honestly evaluate it. And I'm honestly evaluating something I've given my life to serve. You know what I mean? And so sometimes, like, I'm an optimist, but I want to have integrity in terms of my assessment. And I just feel like, for me, I want to say this because I don't want it to sound like comparing or saying ours is better and something's worse. But for me, the name of our church is reflective of my sense of call. And so it's not just a name, it's like an assignment. Change church. So it's not just change church. We want to change church. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is we want to bring credibility back to it. So like, being a pastor is the brand hurdles I have to overcome. You know what I mean?
can imagine.
Our brand is not just, we earned it though.
I'm looking at Sarah over here.
He's preaching my language right now.
It's like the brand image is warranted. Pastors have earned it. And so one of the things, so for me, that's very big because I'm aware of church hurt. And I think sometimes we can minimize that. So, well, I've heard people say, there's all types of hurt. Here's why church hurt is different. The expectation in church is different. I don't have a high expectation of my boss. I don't necessarily have a high expectation of my church because they're not built on my coach, because they're not built on a foundation of like morality and love. When I come to church, I expect this to be the place I can trust to at least be safe. You know what I'm saying? And so the hurt is deeper because the expectation is greater.
It's greater.
So for me, what I feel the burden for is, again, not better or worse, it's like credibility. That's huge for me. So I feel the weight of that probably more than anything else. Like the credibility of that, the credibility of my own marriage, the credibility of how I'm managing my own my life ethically, the credibility of the things that we say, the credibility of the purity of like my motives, which is why I think one of the reasons I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship and why I leaned into it so much, so that when I stand up there on Sunday, I was like, this has nothing to do with my bills. I can literally stand and say, I know I'm doing this because I'm called.
I'm called to do this.
There's nothing about my life or lifestyle that changes if I stop doing this.
That's good.
So all of that is like my sense of call, like that unique agitation. Like I look at the church world, like, that's if I wasn't, you know how sometimes you grow up in church, so you give all the weird stuff a pass. You know, that was dumb, but I get it. And so I feel that burden, and at least the environment I have leadership over, I want it to feel safe. And so that's what we own.
Yeah, I absolutely feel it. I mean, I'm telling you from, you know me, I'm a no fluff person. When I walked through the doors of your church, granted I had no background on you or the church, and I walked in the church and I'm like, feels a little light in here. It's a little heavy in here. It's, it's friendly and flowy. I'm like, okay, I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
Amber and I had a conversation. I said something. She asked me what one of my non-negotiables was. And I was like, I don't really deal with people who aren't connected to God. I don't deal with people who aren't really connected to the source.
Yeah.
And she checked me politely and said, well, I think it's our job as Christians and, to, bring people to God.
Yeah.
And we're in this season of people saying, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
This is what I think they mean. I think they mean I don't ascribe to either one particular religion. So my spirituality is this inclusion of practices from all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And or I reject institutionalized religion.
Okay.
And I'm just kind of prioritizing my personal relationship with God. But technically, I understand what they're saying. And I don't want to get into like semantics, but technically, it's not true because everybody is in some way, if you're engaging in any kind of consistent practices to serve you spiritually, that's religion.
Yeah.
It's just a different kind of religion, right? But whatever you're doing consistently.
You see how Amber's glancing at me right now?
I got the head shake. It's like, okay, if you want to call it that, but technically, if you're doing something regularly, there's a
religiously.
Religiously.
Yeah, it's like you're religious. You're just not religious the way that we're religious.
Right.
You're religious.
I think for me, and I know that these girls, they're both talking about me right now. I know what's happening right now in this moment.
Never, Sarah.
You, Sarah.
Never.
Sarah.
I didn't know.
You're falling right into the trap. I just want you to know.
answering the question.
But it's okay. You be in the trap. I'm gonna help you out a little bit.
They asked me a question. It's not negotiable. I answer the question.
It's not negotiable, truly. I don't be thrown under the bus. It's not negotiable. Okay, so I say that because for me, I feel as though I don't believe in labels, right? I'm very much, even as far as I eat, like I always say, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't eat meat, I don't eat fish, I don't eat all of these things. And people are like, oh, so you're a vegetarian. Because people are always trying to put you in a box or try to understand or label you so you make sense to them, right?
Yeah.
Or so that you just make sense, period. Or they want to relate it to what they know to make sense, right? For me, I'm like, no, I'm a selectarian. I do what I want, right? I don't eat meat. I don't eat fish. I don't eat any of those things. However, if one day, it's been 10 years, right, since I've had those things, but if one day I'm like, you know what, one day I want a steak today, then that'll be the day that I have a steak. And nobody's going to be able to say, oh, well, I thought you were a vegetarian. No, I operate with what I operate with.
Sure.
And so in the same way, I do feel as though the label, like how you're saying, I'm here to change church. I feel like that is so important because so often people put these labels on, but it's an empty substance. So it's literally like having the person that says, oh, I'm a Christian, or oh, I'm Muslim, or oh, whatever it is, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a mom, or whatever it is. But if you're not showing up in that way, are you that? Or are you just the label?
Yeah.
So for me, I don't like to identify with a lot of labels. I like to live my life in a way where you don't have to try to figure out what I am because you see it and you know it and you feel it.
Yeah, I love that.
That's good.
I'm here for it.
But religiously,
I'm here for it.
religiously,
I'm here for it. Yeah.
So that's just my take on it.
So let me ask you, just switching gears just a little bit. I grew up in the church, and I definitely experienced a lot of church hurt from the people in the church, right? So my father, I'm just going to call it, he fell out with our church. And the board of the church was my family. So he really fell out with my family is what it was at the end of the day. But how do you deal with...
That's super complicated.
It was... We had an episode where I talked about how it really changed my identity. When I was younger, a lot of people are trying to find their way and find out who they are.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I knew exactly who I was. I was very confident. I knew... But when all that stuff happened and my identity was so wrapped up in being a preacher's kid and now I wasn't anymore... I was like, well, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing in my life?
Yeah.
You know, people always say, Amber, you carry yourself like a first lady, but that's just in me. My mother, I saw that in my mother, my grandmother. But what hurts me now is when I see things happen in the public eye in a pastor's life, or when a pastor says something that the majority doesn't agree with, and he shouldn't say that because he's a pastor, or somebody gets pregnant or whatever, people just crucify them. And I get it. There's a higher level of accountability. But how do we express that they're still human beings.
Yes.
And nobody's perfect but Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And I just feel I have such compassion because I was on the other side of that.
Yeah.
I was in that home that people were like, crucify him. You know what I mean? And so I have just a different compassion when I see preachers and pastors in the public eye and people just talk about them like a dog, or they just can never get past the past.
The mistake that they may have made 15 years ago.
Exactly. It's like they are always that mistake and nothing more. What do you like? How do we deal with that? How do we address that?
Yeah, I think that's, it's tough. And there's sort of a couple of things that come to my mind, and I'm wondering if, I think I want to make sure I frame this the right way. So this is what I think. I do think that just generally speaking, and I can only speak for like my context, like with church, so I can't speak for other religions, but generally speaking, my experience kind of my whole life with my faith has been we're really discriminatory when it comes to who we give grace to.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not trying to make it some philosophical issue or whatever, but it's like, I don't even know if we actually get grace. Like if we actually understand that you don't get to discriminate who you give grace to. So grace it means unearned favor. So it's like, of course the person doesn't deserve it. That's why you give it to them
anyway.
Unearned favor.
That's what grace means. That's the definition.
It means, yes, they don't deserve it. And so I think at the root of it, we just really don't get grace. So we don't show it to each other. I see it being, so I see a couple of things. So one, you're right. I can see like sometimes extreme vitriol toward pastors. And it's like, sometimes the people more mad than his family is.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, yo, the family should, if they all right, you should
we good over here.
Yeah. But I've seen it, I've seen grace like not be given as freely to leadership. Yet at the same time, I do believe that leaders, we do have a responsibility for a degree of character, not perfection, but mastery. I do think that's important. But yet at the same time, people fall short. So I get that. But I've also seen it with women. I feel like men, this is my experience now. I only talk about my experience because people say that it wasn't that way in my church. I didn't go to your church. I'm just talking about my experience. Right. It was like men would get it, but women like wouldn't. So like I grew up in an area where, let's say like if a girl got pregnant, she would have to like get up and
say exactly. I got pregnant, then you sit them down. She can't be in the choir.
But the dude never got up.
Right. That's just true.
I was like, yo, he's still on the drums.
Right.
Yeah. So I just feel like we don't get grace in general.
That's good.
We just discriminate when it comes to who we give it to. And it's like, yo, it's a free gift. You freely give it to everybody. You can decide whether or not you want to rock with that person anymore. You can decide whether or not you want to be led by that leader anymore. But that doesn't give you the right to kill him, crucify him, him or her, just because they fell short.
I agree with that. I feel like there's an artist, a gospel. You guys know I love gospel music. I like literally that's my jam, either gospel and sometimes R&B. And so there's an artist that I really love who I'm not going to name, and really big artist anyway. There was a kerfluffle that he had been experienced infidelity inside of his marriage.
If I had my phone, I would look that one up. So you dropping bars. I'm learning.
Oh my goodness. So there was infidelity in his marriage, and everybody was talking about like infidelity. Okay, I like his music. I don't follow this man. I'm not this man's friend. I've never had a conversation with him on the phone. I like your music. Your music moves me, and I think people so often put the pressure on the person instead of on the message. Right? It's all about the messenger instead of about the message, because the blessing is just coming through that person. They're just a vessel for you to receive what you receive. So have you felt like in your career thus far you've experienced any kind of like, they try to make it about you instead of making it about your message?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I don't know if I've felt that in the way that you're describing it, but I have felt that in terms of, I think there can be a sometimes an unhealthy codependency that people have on spiritual leaders.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so I need you to know my role in your life,
Yeah.
but I don't need you to give me, don't give me God role.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
exactly.
Yeah. So it's like,
I'm not Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so,
perfect.
yeah, I don't have all of the answers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, there are times where people ask me questions like, so what do you think I should do? And I'm like, yo, this is not a black and white decision. Every decision is not black and white.
Right.
Sometimes it's not good, bad. Sometimes it's better, best.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a great decision. And that's a decision where you need your own relationship with God
Yeah.
because it could go either way. So
Yeah.
you don't need my advice, you need your own relationship. So I feel like I've kind of felt that a little
so
bit.
good.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
that's good.
From time to time. And I'm not quite sure how to break that other than making sure that people are always clear, yo, this is my role. This is God's role in your life. Let's not get these two things
Don't
confused.
get it misconstrued,
Yeah.
right?